Alright, checklist is done. Run-up's complete. Everything is looking good. Got a full tank of gas. Beautiful morning, nice and clear. So I think today I'm going to go out and get a little bit of practice in, but for this part I'm going to just demonstrate how I do my AeroCarb. So I set it up so that my mixture is good, full rich on takeoff. And that's the way, obviously you need the engine to run smoothly at full power. But knowing that, I'm probably going to need to lean it at idle. So right now you can see I'm leaned out quite a bit. I can actually even lean a little bit more. That's going to keep the plugs clean. It's going to keep the engine happy. So don't be afraid to lean it on the ground. You want to lean it so that, if you try to take off, you're not going to be able to get to full power because you're too lean. So I'll demonstrate that in here in just a second. The pattern's clear, and we're ready to go. Raymond traffic, Sonic 604 Charlie Mike, departing 30, Raymond. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to roll onto the runway. Everything's configured, it's all set. I'm going to make a no-flap takeoff. But I'm not going to advance my mixture. And you'll hear when the throttle comes up, it'll just burble. By aggressively leaning, you'll get that precautionary warning, as there's no way you can even get into medium power. So you'll be able to reset it immediately. If you only lean a little bit, you might be able to get off the ground. You might be able to run on a slightly lean, but still dangerous, damaging lean condition. Alright, so let me set the brake, kick back. Okay, so throttle coming up, still leaned. I got to 2,000 RPM and it died. So that's the whole idea behind that. Okay, so the brake's off, mixture rich, throttle coming up. And I like to roll in the throttle slowly, let the engine accelerate.
Caution.
Airspeed's alive, a little bit of forward pressure. And we're off and flying. Now typically what I do is I just back off just a hair because their engine runs noticeably smoother if I just back the throttle off just a hair. That last little bit seems to sometimes just doesn't really give me any more RPM. My EGTs rise and I run a little rough. So there I've got just a touch of high EGT there. I'll just back off just a little bit. That'll come on right down. Alright, so my CHDs are well controlled. My highest one is 271. Raymond traffic, Sonic 604 Charlie Mike, departing to the southwest, Raymond. Alright, so I'm still at full power, climbing out well. I'll just go up to about 2,000 feet here. So highest CHD, 279, so still doing well. I'm climbing out at 117 indicated.
12 miles to the south, down.
Switch off the frequency here. Okay, there's 2,000 feet. I'm going to roll back to cruise. I like to cruise at 2750, 2850 maybe. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to roll back to about 2650, and just let the airplane level out and accelerate, and I'll start leaning it. Now I know from experience that I'm going to have to lean it a half inch or 3/4 inch. So I'll just go ahead and put in an initial lean on it. As the airplane levels off and accelerates, the prop will unwind a bit. I'm not going to be able to set my final throttle position and mixture setting until I get totally leveled, engine unwound, all that. Alright, so I'm holding steady. I went a little bit above 2,000. I'm at 2250. Alright, holding steady. Airspeed's up. I'm going to put in just a touch of trim here. Alright, so my airspeed is now pretty well stabilized. I'm at 143, inching up to 144. And my RPM have come up to 2780, 2790, which is fine. I can leave it right there. I can just lean until I'm happy. I'm burning 8 gallons an hour right now. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to lean it. I'm looking for about 1350 or so on my CHDs. And right now I'm only into the mid-12s. Mid-12s on the front and high 11s on the backs. So just lean it out a little bit, see what happens. Now I'm likely going to pick up RPM as I do this. And so I can either just take the RPM increase, or I can back off my throttle at the same time. If I back off the throttle, I'm going to need to lean a little more. So I went up to a little higher in the 12s. Bring that back a little. 28, 30 RPM. Okay, there's a little higher in the 12s. Now I'm into the low 13s in the first cylinder, 2840. Every time I lean it, I'm leaning at about 1/8 of an inch, and I'm giving it a few seconds to respawn. All right, so I'm seeing the first cylinder into about the mid-13s, 1340. All right, so now I'm kind of getting into a sweet spot on my mixture. I'm just going to roll this back just a hair, try to get back to that 2750. Now I'm still low. I'm only at 2,000 feet. If I go up another couple thousand feet, I can pick up my speed and drop my fuel burn. But we're going to stay down low just for this demo. Okay, so I'm back to 2740, 2730. And I'm just going to, my temps have dropped, so I'm down to the low 13s again. So I'll just lean a little bit more again. Alright, so I'm back up to the mid-13s on the hottest, low 13s on the other front, and I'm in the high 12s on the back four. So this is looking pretty good. This is a typical, for me, a typical cruise type configuration. I'm at 2750. I'm burning 6.1, and I'm showing 143. So now as I get higher, I can increase my throttle and then richen slightly. Sometimes, depending on how high you go, you don't even really need to richen because you need to lean anyway for the reduction in air density. But the amount you open the throttle just about matches the amount you would need to lean for going up higher. I'm kind of settling around 140. The other thing is, you want to be careful that you don't abuse the engine. So I'm at 2,000 feet, density altitude of 3,500. So consulting my chart, I want to be careful on the engine, anything above 75% power. So 2750 at 4,000 density altitude is 72% power. So I'm still okay. I can lean it without being excessively hard on the engine. All right. So in a nutshell, that's how I manage my AeroInjector, and this works really well. So what I did is I gave it just a bit of throttle, and I saw my EGT bump up into the 1380 range. That's still okay. That's kind of getting to be about as hot as I like to cruise. And if I don't like that, I can just richen this up just a touch, and that'll take care of that. So I went from 6.1 to 6.3. So when I say I like to cruise at 2750 at 6.5, what I'm really saying is anywhere from 2750 to 2850, somewhere in that range. I like to go up to 4,000, 6,000, 8,000, something like that, so I can start getting a little bit of lower fuel burn. And then I would typically see a true airspeed of around 150. So right now, again, I'm at 2250. That's a density altitude of 3780, indicating 146, truing out at 155, 2790 at 6.4. At this particular moment, I'm still in that range. I'm still under my 6.5. I'm in my 150 mile an hour true. And depending on how I fly this, I may speed up a little bit, I may slow down a little bit, I may get a little less fuel burn if I climb, may get a little more speed at the same fuel. But I'm kind of in my ballpark flight planning range of 2750 at 150 true for 6.5 gallons. Now, if I need to conserve fuel, I can slow down just a little bit, and I can reduce my fuel burn quite a bit. So let me go down to 2500. $2,500 feels kind of slow, but it's a pretty easy setting. So I'm going to trim out here. Okay, I'm going to lean it out. Try to keep my my hottest temps into the mid 1300s. Looks like I overshot just a bit. Okay, so I'm back up to 25, 1340 on the hottest. So just here. Okay, so I'm back to the mid to high 13s, 25, 20, 4.8 gallons, and I'm indicating 128, truing out at 135. in range, about 100 miles. So I'm showing 392 miles of range at just a hair under 3 hours duration right now at this power setting, compared to about 300 miles at about 2.5 hours of duration. So if I need to conserve gas, I can do this. Now I have been experimenting with leaning and just experimenting how lean I can go. The engine just used to go a lot leaner. I just haven't been totally comfortable operating it like that. So if you lean until the onset of perceptible roughness and then richen slightly, let's see what we get. That's a common leaning technique. I'm gonna monitor the EGTs, but I'm gonna lean by feel here. So if I lean out a little bit more, now there's perceptible roughness down to 3.3, 3.2. Okay, richened seems to be pretty smooth now. Come back to a little bit higher EGT. So my front two are in the high 13s. The hottest one is right at 14. And I'm back to about the same fuel burn of, I'm showing 4.6 currently. So for me, I can go a little bit leaner, but I guess I'm a little more comfortable with that margin of error. So I try to lean till I'm right about 1380 on my hottest, and hopefully the other cylinders will be close to that. They're usually up to 100 degrees cooler, and I usually just kind of call that good enough. All right, so I'm back to 2530 RPM, showing 405, 406 miles of range, 3 hours, 5 minutes duration. So again, it'll fluctuate based on the exact fuel consumption at this particular moment. But I'm back to 127, maybe bumping up towards 128, truing out at 135. This is a pretty good sort of endurance setting right here, 2500 RPM. So according to my power tables, I'm at 3500 density altitude, so it's close to my 4,000 foot line. At 2500, showing a true airspeed of 125, 6.4 on the fuel burn. That's kind of far off, but a range of 314 miles. So I'm doing significantly better than that, according to the power table. All right, so I'm going to go back to a more normal cruise. So I'm going to richen up a little bit. Let the temp stabilize. We're coming down. Bring the throttle back up a bit. Up a little bit more. Coming back up to about 2750. Take a little bit of trim out. So this is where a little bit more precise fixture knob would be an asset. I've been thinking about replacing this with one of those micro vernier mixture knobs, something that doesn't stick out too far, but I can still twist for fine adjustments. Because right now I'm pushing the button and I'm creeping it out just a little bit at a time. Hard to get very precise control. Alright, so I'm kind of in the ballpark. I haven't really dialed it in. Running a little bit rich at 6.8, 6.9, 2760, back up to 144 indicated, 151 true currently. Snap a couple of photos here. Alright, just do a map check here. Looks like we're 12 miles from the airport. I've got the airport in sight over there. Everything's running good. So, oil pressure is holding at about 50 psi at 187 degrees. That's pretty typical. I will see a little bit of fluctuation at higher RPMs. It'll bounce between 30 and 55. I don't know whether it's the sender bouncing or it's vibration induced or it's cavitating a little bit on the pickup. I'm not really sure what to make of that. Jabiru has said that these are cheap senders and I should replace it with a higher quality BDO. That may be it. But I think maybe it's significant that I get a little fluctuation only at my highest RPMs or hottest temperatures, which to me kind of says there's something going on with the oil in the pickup. I'm going to keep playing with that. And I'll see sometimes up to about 200 degrees. I think I've seen as high as 210 on a hot day and a heavy climb out. But it'll settle usually back into about 175 to about 195. Pretty typical range. Alright, so I'm going to make my approach back into the airport. I'm just going to maneuver to the other side and come in on a 45. And I'm really not going to touch my, my mixture. As I reduce power to come into the pattern, I'm not going to need to go to full rich. I won't need to go to full rich until it's time to come back up to higher power. As a matter of fact, when I land, I'm going to have to lean it out for ground operation anyway. So I'm going to leave it right where it is. Of course, that means that if I do need to come up on the power, I got to get in on that mixture at the same time. That's more of a mental programming. Alright, I'm going to make my radio call here. Wrong frequency. Raymond traffic, Sonic 604 Charlie Mike, 5 miles southwest. We'll be entering on a 45 for downwind 30 Raymond. Alright, I'm still at 2,200 feet, 2,300. I'm going to bring the power back a little bit as I'm on my 45. Coming down to pattern altitude of about 1,300. placards a caution range for crews from 2100 to 2300. For short-term operations, you can operate there, you can move through there, but they recommend against cruising for prolonged periods of time there. I find that if I just drop down to about 2000 RPM, makes a good descent setting. Alright, coming up on pattern altitude. Finishing up my 45. I'll be turning downwind here in just a moment. There's pattern altitude, just put in a little bit of power and level off. Raymond traffic, Sonic 604 Charlie Mike, turning downwind, 30 Raymond. Alright, so I'm at 2000 RPM. Put in a little bit of trim. Flying the downwind leg of the pattern. And I'm showing about 107 right now. This is a little slower than I would normally fly. But I'm close to my beam to touchdown point. I'm going to be pulling some power and some flaps anyway, so we'll just sit back and enjoy the view. Make it a little easier to pull some flap on when I reduce power. Alright, I'm just about to beam the numbers. So I'm going to reduce power to about 1800. 1700 maybe. Get a little bit of trim. I'm below 100, so I can put my first notch flaps on. And I'm good. I'm going to fly to that 45. Now you can pull power all the way off and just fly power off, but I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to leave a touch of power in. Raymond traffic, Sonic 604 Charlie Mike. Turning base, 30, full stop, Raymond. Alright, so as my base turn, I'm going to reduce power again. Go ahead and go to full flaps, put the rest of my trim in. Showing 80. I'm a little fast, but I'll slow down here on final. Okay, the runway is made. Showing 75. That's pretty good. It's about right where I want to be. I got all my trim fed in. Going a little high on the glide. Power's all the way off. And I can just hold it and I'll touch down a little further down. Or I can throw a slip in. I won't slip it today. I'll just hold what I got. Alright, I'm showing 70. Coming over the threshold, I want to be showing 65. There's 65. Coming close to the ground, I'll start my round out. And we're down. Pretty much a non-event. So I can see the taxiway coming up here. I'm going to put the flaps up and maybe give it a little bit of brake just for giggles. Alright, so once I'm clear of the runway, then I'm going to go ahead and lean for ground operation. And again, I'm going to brutally lean, especially since I'm heading back to the hangar. So I don't want to leave any excess carbon in there. I want to keep the plugs as clean as possible. And if I do this right, I can taxi. I've got throttle up to about 16 or 1700 RPM. And if I go above that, it'll start to die. if I really lean it out, maybe I can only get to about 1,300 RPM. That's still plenty for taxi. Alright, so that was, well, I don't know, what, going 37 minutes, and burned 2.9 gallons. That's pretty cheap fun right there. I don't care what anybody says. Burning car gas at about 205 a gallon for premium. That made my my flight this morning about the same cost as a breakfast. I can handle that. All right, so let's just see where I was with regards to my leaning. So let's see what I can get to before I stumble. There's 1,400, 16, 17, 19. Maybe I wasn't quite as lean as I thought. All right, well, that's all kind of academic. I can tell you from experience, though, that this is pretty well leaned. If I go just a little bit more, it's going to die. All right, so the last thing is how I shut down my engine. You can just lean it here and kill it at the carb. You can shut it off with the mags. And I like to do that periodically just to make sure the mags are both grounding. So, I don't know if you can see that, but I definitely can hear it and feel it. So the mags are working, the engine started to quit. But what I like to do is I like to shut off the fuel valve, and that burns all the fuel out of the system. Through the carb, through the fuel lines, it's not marinating in my flow sensor, none of that. It's all dry and all clean. And so I'll just pull the fuel shut-off valve, let it quit. And then when I'm done, I'll pull the mixture off, and you can see it moved about 1/4 of an inch. And now the mixture is fully off at idle cutoff. And now I get no possible drip in case my fuel valve opens up, but my line should be clean and empty, my valve off. And that's pretty much what I do. You can do a cool down period, but I find just a regular taxi usually allows things to cool down. And as a matter of fact, since I was sitting here idling, my temperatures actually increased a little bit because I didn't have any airflow going through the cowling. I mean, I had the prop wash, but I really didn't have a whole lot else. So I think just a good regular taxi is as effective as anything else. So that's it. I hope you enjoy seeing how I manage my AeroCarb. I like its simplicity. I like the fact that I have complete control, that I can choose to burn a little more gas and a little higher speed, or I can lean out at altitude, or I can find a good economy cruise. I'm not stuck with just kind of what I get, but I have a real high degree of control. I do like that, and I like the simplicity. So it may not work for everybody, but I think it works pretty good in this application. Catch you next time. Thanks.